But tonight, so we have Ginger Bislinghoff. I'm going to get it. She's here with us tonight. And so she is the author of the book, It's in Your Face, The True You Revealed. And she's going to be giving us an overview of her book as well as the work that she does. She does a lot of holistic work, including kinesiology, flower essences, and face reading. So I'll pass it on to Ginger.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I like to start off by just giving a story, my story of how I got into this work, because it's personal and it's professional at the same time. And for many people, it actually helps them understand what I do a little bit better. So I think there's a joke about God when we have a plan, and I like to call it, instead of sliding door moments. For the time I was little, I really thought I was going to go to college and I was going to work with blind deaf, and I actually had an opportunity to do an internship when I was in high school, and I started to learn Braille and was teaching Braille, and that was my focus. And off I went to University of Maine to be a speech therapist, and I also spent 3 hours every day in the gym as a gymnast, and I was my coach's guinea pig. I would try anything. I had no fear whatsoever. And so I was in the gym working with my coach, and did a move, missed the beam, ended up landing on my head, missed the mats, woke up in the ambulance. I don't really know the whole story of what happened. But I woke up in the ambulance, and this was my freshman year. It was Friday the 13th, but I'm really not superstitious. I should be, but I'm not. And the long and short of it is, that was my freshman year of college. I competed the following weekend, but I thought, I must be really nervous because I think I'm going to pass out before I competed. And, I had a pretty severe head trauma, but, when you're 18 years old, it's like, Well, anyway, by the time I was a junior in college, I couldn't make it through a day. I was going numb. I had pain in my head. My arms would go numb. I go, something is really, really seriously wrong. And I ended up leaving college and going home. And kind of going back to talking about sliding door moments. Has anyone ever seen the movie with Gwyneth Paltrow? I think it was like 1998, 1999. It's called Sliding Doors. And the basic premise of the movie is she gets fired from her job, leaves the building, runs down the stairs to get on the subway. The door closes. She doesn't get on, and you watch that story of her life. And then at the same time in the movie, she gets fired, runs down the stairs to get on the subway, gets on the subway, the door closes, and you watch that story of her life. They change her hairdo so you know which story you're watching. But I think we all have those sliding door moments, and this was mine in particular. And so by the time I left college in my junior year, came home, started seeing doctors, and a lot of them said, oh, that's just in your head. I'm like, yeah, it is. It's in my head. So I ended up at the Baptist in Boston with a top neurosurgeon. He had talked to me for a few minutes. He goes, I want you in the hospital right now. There's something really seriously wrong. And that was back in the day when they did barbaric medical tests. They did pneumoencephalograms, where they actually go and they take out the spinal fluid in your body, inject air up into your head. If you Google it, you'll find out people are either dead from it or have had such severe pain that they don't do that anymore. Luckily, we have MRIs and CAT scans now. But anyway, I wasn't allowed to pick my head up for 5 days, and I couldn't have picked my head up. The pain was so excruciating, worse than anything I ever had from the original head trauma. And so the neurosurgeon said to me, I'm 20 years old at this point, sorry, but you're just going to have pain for the rest of your life and be on drugs. And at 20, it's like, well, I have a choice. I either stay home and live with pain, or get out there and try and make a life. So I ended up going to nursing school. I don't even know why. Another sliding door moment. My mother said, really, you're going to nursing school? You gag over everything. But I went to nursing school, and I guess that was part of the plan. And I met my husband, and he got me through nursing school, because I would be flat on my back at the end of the day studying like this, because the pain in my head would be so severe. I just couldn't keep my head up. So I worked in the hospital. I was kind of an adrenaline junkie a little bit. I loved ICU and CCU, and put my time in the hospital. But the whole time I kept saying, we're missing something, we're missing something, we're missing something. And at one point I was head nurse on a telemetry unit, a step-down cardiac unit. And I went to the director of nursing and I said, we're getting the same patients back over and over again, what are we doing wrong? Could I do home visits and see if we're missing something? And she allowed me to do that. And my conclusion was they're doing what they've been told to do. They're taking their medication, they're making lifestyle changes, they're still coming back in with cardiac problems. So we didn't really find out what the problem was. When I left the hospital, I worked at another hospital, started an outpatient nutrition clinic, and got to do a lot of corporate work and wellness work, and then worked for Johnson & Johnson Company writing their wellness programs. Another sliding door moment. We did such a good job I was an independent contractor, there were 3 of us, and we did such a good job that they pulled her to the corporate headquarters in New Jersey, and so we ran the wellness programs for a year until they hired someone else. And the person who they hired liked to micromanage, and we were used to managing ourselves. So after a while I said, I really can't be micromanaged anymore. I'm going to be resigning with no plan. I had no plan, which normally I did. And so I left and I went, oh geez, I don't have a plan. Meanwhile, a week later, my aunt called me, who was also a nurse, and she said, hey, do you want to go with me to California and study kinesiology? I said, sure, what is it? When we get to facial structures, you'll know why. I said, sure, what is it? Let's go. So she said, well, first you have to go see Lillian. She is a kinesiologist, and you have to have a session with her first. I went, okay. So I went to see Lillian. Now, I'm not 5 feet tall, but Lillian makes me feel really tall. She's a little elf of a woman. She's in her 90s, still working. And she said, why are you here? I said, well, Sonia brought me. And she said, any physical concerns? I go, yeah, but there's no cure. She goes, why don't we muscle test and find out? Now, I didn't know muscle testing or kinesiology from anything. I was brand new. This is back in the 80s, 30 plus years ago. So is anyone here familiar with muscle testing or kinesiology? Few people. Okay, and I will talk about that, what it is. So Lillian muscle tested me, and just kind of really quick, muscle testing or kinesiology is really, it's a tool. It's a biofeedback tool to have access to your body wisdom. What's going on with you? How does your body want to heal? What is blocking or preventing your body from healing physically, mentally, emotionally, and or spiritually? So she did some muscle testing, and she said, well, let's ask your body if it believes that there is no cure. And my body wisdom said, didn't buy that. Now, to this day, I don't know what Lillian said after that, because what I heard was, you have a choice. I had not been given a choice. And I'd been living with chronic pain and thought that was going to be it for the rest of my life. So, again, I don't know what Lillian said, but that moment changed my entire life. I said, let's get to California, because I have to study this. This is what I've been looking for. I didn't know I was looking for it, but this is it. And off we went to California. Now looking back, I realized how fortunate I was that we went and studied at a place in Berwick, California, called 3-in-1 Concepts, and we really got a comprehensive study. We had to travel all over the country to study, but we were able to study behavioral kinesiology, educational kinesiology, clinical kinesiology, flower essences, and one of my instructors was Daniel Whiteside. And Daniel Whiteside's parents had the School of Personology, Robert and Elizabeth Whiteside. And they had taken previous research with facial structures, physiognomy, where they used to study the bumps on the head and look at people's personality. And Robert and Elizabeth had done a 5-year research study on people's facial structures and how they actually function. Daniel, when he coordinated with Gordon Stokes, who used to be the educational director for Touch for Health. Touch for Health is one of the first applied kinesiology systems that were really brought to us here in the United States. And we'll talk about that too. And so when they joined forces to create this school, they did some muscle testing around all of these structures and said, let's find the ones that are 99% accurate, that 99% of the time we can see this particular structure and expect this behavior. Now, at the time, I had no use for that whatsoever. I just didn't understand for the purpose of studying facial structures. I wanted to learn muscle testing. I wanted to study the body from an Eastern perspective. I'd already studied it from the Western perspective. I wanted to pull those worlds together and just help people. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that all of a sudden something clicked and I went, this stuff is incredible. Why didn't I like it originally? And I started taking advanced courses in facial structures and learning more and more and more. But meanwhile, what I love, I've been doing this particular work for 30 years. I can't believe that. I can't believe I'm that old, but I am. Now, you guys have to keep in mind, I started studying this in the 80s. Now, in the 80s, nothing was holistic. Everything was alternative, and everything was in the woo-woo category. So you can imagine that my friends and family thought that maybe we were a little nuts going out to California to study. But I have to say, I'm usually the first one who they call when there's something going on. Because what I love about muscle testing or kinesiology, again, it's a biofeedback tool. There's many different ways to muscle test. Some people use a pendulum. Esther, do you use a pendulum or do you muscle test? Pendulum. But the main principle, whether you're doing applied kinesiology, behavioral, clinical, educational, the premise is still the same no matter who you work with. And the premise is you are the only one with information about you in your body. And I tell my clients, I don't care what the books say, I don't care what the medical books say, I don't care what my books say. Let's muscle test and find out what your body says is best for you. Because what works for this person over here with the same symptoms may not work for this person here. I work with a lot of clients with anxiety, panic attacks, PTSD, a lot of trauma. The root cause is different for everybody. How someone perceives stress and trauma is different for everybody. So one size doesn't fit all. So I love being able to muscle test someone, knowing that my job is to be neutral. I really have to leave any of my beliefs or thoughts outside the door. My job is to be neutral in order to be effective. And once we start working together as a team, I am doing the muscle testing, but your body wisdom, when I talk about body wisdom, it's physically, chemically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of you. Not just a symptom, but looking at all of you so we get the whole story. Your body runs the show, not me. Your body wisdom is telling me what to do or how to help you, which is just so exciting because that's what was missing when I was working in the hospitals and patients kept coming back. You know, we weren't getting to the root cause because we were just looking at symptoms. The symptoms are here, the cause is down here. And often by the time our physical body starts to have pain or tension, there's been something mentally, emotionally, or spiritually that's out of balance. It's just that we don't wake up. I'm still waiting for the day when we can wake up with a spreadsheet where everything is just listed of all the things that we still need to look at and work at. But 75% of what goes on a daily basis is taking place in our subconscious mind. And we don't wake up going, oh yeah, let me tune into my subconscious today and see what I need to focus on. Muscle testing allows us to bypass the conscious mind, get to the subconscious, get to the patterns, the fears, the thought forms, whatever may be going on a deeper level, so that we can figure out how your body wants to go about healing. Now, because I work with so much trauma, I do like to work with really gentle modalities. I figure someone has already been through enough. Life has been hard enough. Why make healing difficult? So is anyone here familiar with flower essences? A couple of people. Okay, let me just talk about that for a second. I had the great fortune, how many years ago? 15 to 20 years ago maybe, to study with Ian White from Australia, who has created the Australian bush flower essences. I work with hundreds of flower essences, and you'll hear me say with every single one, oh, this is my favorite. Every one is my favorite. But flower essences, every single flower and plant has a healing property to it. And someone who makes the flower essences understands what's called the doctrine of signatures of the plant. How it grows, where it grows, the number of petals, the color of the petals. There's so many stories and properties that go into making a flower essence and why that particular flower helps us to heal this particular dis-ease or symptom in our body. Now, David Dalton, who's in Hampton Falls with Delta Gardens, he's a Lyme specialist as well. He actually works with the vibration of the plant from the minute the shoot starts to come up all the way to when the flower has completely bloomed. Every single part of the growing process has a whole different vibration. Flower essences are a vibrational medicine. And what I usually will buy, these are called stock bottles. Well, I'll talk about Ian for a minute. When Ian goes out into the bush, he often gets an Aborigine guide, and he goes out into the bush in Australia. And often he's making a flower essence out of a plant that has never been around a human being. You know, that energy is pristine. Now, Ian has such reverence for plants and flowers, and before he even goes out into the bush, he's already done multiple meditations and actually waited to get permission from the flower. One flower he waited 17 years to get permission to make an essence. And it's a process that's usually done with the sun, sometimes a moon essence. But he will have an actual bowl of spring water and will actually take the petals and the stems of the flower, not with his fingers. He will actually get a part of the flower to actually put them in the water. And he goes into deep meditation, usually while there's direct sunlight, because he's making what's called the mother tincture. And it usually takes several hours before he finally gets the signal that the essence has been made, and he will remove the petals or the parts of the flower that he's used. The mother tincture then becomes a stock bottle. I buy what's called a stock bottle. And from this stock bottle, I can take 7 drops and make a dose bottle so that someone can have their own individual flower essence. I was able to study with Ian and became one of his practitioners and instructors. But I also work with Green Hope Farm Flower Essences, which is here in Maine, in New Hampshire. Molly Sheehan makes incredible flower essences. Some of you have probably heard of the Bach Flower Remedies, Rescue Remedy. I mean, you can buy that in a grocery store now that Dr. Bach created those in the 1930s, and the Bach Flower Remedies are still used widely. I also work with Tree Frog Farm Essences that are out in Washington State. There are hundreds and hundreds of flower essences out there, and what I love about a flower essence is that there's no side effect. With an essential oil or even a homeopathic remedy, we get the wrong one, there could be side effects. Working with vibrational medicine, if for some reason we took the wrong flower essence, our body just doesn't use it. Just works its way out into the aura and keeps on going. With one exception. And the thing I really appreciate about Ian White is that he is always asking for case studies. He's like, this is what I know so far. I want you to tell me what you're learning from your clients about these flower essences. And he has 2 full-time staff members who do nothing but gather up the case studies that are sent and then reference and cross-reference and document. And in one particular flower essence called Peach Flower Tea Tree, if that one comes up for someone who I'm working with who happens to be type 1 or type 2 diabetic, they have to guarantee that they will check their blood sugars, because the case studies have shown that many people have taken the flower essence for 2 weeks. Some have gotten off of their insulin and never gone back on again, or gotten off of their medication, because it actually goes in and works with the pancreas. So it's phenomenal. Again, I could keep you here forever with stories, but I won't. So I really get to do quite an overview of things with people. I'm in a network group, and we've been helping each other with our elevator speech, our 1 minute. And finally someone said to me, so what you're telling me is that when traditional medicine no longer works, that's when people find you. And I said, yes, you're right, can I use that? And then I do have what I call my simple method, taking something impossible and make it possible with a lot less effort. And that's where muscle testing comes in. And that's really another whole workshop too. I'm going to get to face reading. But questions so far? Yes.
When you were talking about the essence, peach
Yeah.
tree essence?
Peach flower tea tree?
So if they go off their medication, after taking this for 2 weeks, do they have to continue taking the flower essences?
It's very individual, and of course, if peach flower tea tree comes up for someone who I'm working with who is diabetic, I say, first of all, 1, you got to take your blood sugars. 2, you have to let your doctor know what you're doing, because it's very individual. There's some people who may be able to reduce the dose. Maybe they don't ever go off. Some people go off. Everyone's going to be very different. It really depends on what else might be going on, what other systems might be affected. But there are so many case studies of people who have had great results with the flower essence and either getting off their medication, or it boggles my mind that someone can actually get off of insulin.
Yeah, and do they also change their diet too?
In many cases, yes, although a lot, again, it's so individual. Some people already have their diet under control. They already are changing their lifestyle. So it's very individual. Because if I get someone who maybe is a type 2 diabetic and they still want to eat junk, it may help somewhat, but it's, it's got to, the thing about holistic, I'll just make this point before we get to face reading. Holistic medicine, it's different than our medical model that we're used to. We're used to getting a prescription or a pill, and supposedly it's a cure. Holistic is a process. It's steps. It's not always easy. It involves a process and usually steps and work. And not everyone wants to do that. So that's something I always like to point out to people to see how ready someone really is to actually make the effort. Because I don't fix people.
And you can muscle test for that too.
Oh, yes, I can. Oh, yes, I can. I have many ways to find out. Yes, it's called. And sometimes it's called the psychological reversal, where we say one thing, our conscious mind says one thing, our subconscious mind goes, you don't really want to do that. It's a subconscious condition of self-sabotage. We all have psychological reversals. Trust me, if you've ever been on a diet, you know when you go, oh, I'm on a diet. But I am going to have that piece of cake because I'm going to the gym tomorrow. So that will be, we all have some form of self-sabotage that we have done or may still be doing. Let's just be real clear about that because we're having a human experience here. Yeah. Any other questions? And I can definitely ask questions at the end too if you have more. So let's have a little fun too. I love face reading, and here's why. A lot of people go, oh, don't look at my face. The thing, our entire life story is on our face, our resume is on our face, who we are, our gifts, our talents, our abilities, it's all written on our face, which I think is just so cool. What's really fun is if when you go home, you can find some pictures of yourself when you were a baby or a little child or a teenager and see what you looked like then and how many of your traits are the same now, which ones have changed. Teenage years is when a lot of our facial traits will start to change depending on what we're going through and what kind of support we might be getting for it. But what I love, like when, last year I got to do a career fair at the middle school in Hampton. I'm going to do it again this year. And these were middle schoolers, so I didn't really know what to think because middle school is a whole different breed. But these were the greatest kids. Oh, I had so much fun. And it was a career fair, so some of the kids were coming up and I was reading their structures. And this one girl came up and I was looking at her forehead and I said, are you an artist? And she went, because she looked kind of shy. I said, are you an artist? She went, yes. How do you know that? And I said, have you considered that for a career? She goes, yeah. Well, she had a very rounded forehead. What we're looking at is cell proportion. And she had a lot of cells in this area right here. And this area of the forehead is about imagination and creative thinking and original thinking. And my eyes just kind of went right to her forehead. And watching her affect change in that moment, pointing out something that was one of her strengths that I didn't know her, I'd never met her before. But to see her face and see the reaction when I said, are you an artist? And she just lit up. And that's something she really is considering as a career. So there's no good or bad structure to have. This is who we are. There are extremes, though. And sometimes I actually would bring Barbie and Ken with me, but instead I brought my husband. So because we are textbook opposites, and we didn't have this information at the beginning of our marriage. So we do have stories, and it's nice for him to be able to, if he needs to give his side of the story, he can. And in my book, I do tell stories because we are textbook opposite. And, they say opposites attract, and there's a reason because we really can learn from each other. So there are extremes. Let's call one extreme type A, where you don't see as many cells. For example, when we get to lips, someone with very, very thin lips, type A. You're not going to see a lot. Now we have Angelina Jolie over here, type C, big lips. And then a lot of us are right smack in the middle. In fact, when I'm teaching, I teach a lot of nurses and teachers and people in the healing arts. They have a lot of B traits because they're so used to working with extremes in everybody. And sometimes that's, when you look at our resume, if we have a lot of B traits, we probably will end up in a field of teaching, helping, caregiving, because we can pretty much get along with anybody. We can kind of understand the extremes. So, but again, there's no good or bad one to have. Now, if all you ever remember tonight is this one structure that we're going to talk about, this could change your whole life. And it's eyelids. When I work with couples and they say we're having communication issues, I don't look at their lips. I look at their eyelids. Ross, would you like to come up here? This is my husband, Ross. And we are a textbook opposite. So eyelids, and we can tell stories about this. Eyelids has so much to do with making a relationship work because we are extremes. Exposed eyelid right here. I'm the Nike ad. Let's do it 5 minutes ago. I'm the one standing in line doing this, like, what's taking everybody so long? Let's go. Because I want to get things done. Nike ad. Ross has what's called epicanthic folds. The eyelid goes up into the eye socket. This particular trait has to do with intellectual justification. He is an engineer, and you'd want an engineer, a surgeon, an editor. There's certain careers paths that you would like to have someone with that structure. Because the way it used to go, I'd be like, talk. What do you think? Did you hear me? And I'm like, now I'm taking it very personally. This is before I studied face reading. And I took it so personally. I'm like, he's not listening to me. He doesn't want to give me an answer. He was thinking. And he needed maybe hours, maybe a day in order to really think it through, maybe get more information in order to intellectually justify, in order to give me a good answer. What he would do would tell me what he thought I wanted to hear just to get me off his back. Because I'd be like, well, did you hear me? What we discovered, and then when we were studying this, I was studying it, but I think he loves it just as much because I'm like, oh, he was thinking, oh my God. So then the day came, talk. Why don't we talk tonight? Give you a chance to think about it. And he was all set to give me an instant answer, but I was trying to, give him enough time to be able to consider it. So, you're going to see certain people in certain fields with epicanthic folds because that's a really important trait to have for that particular career path. What happens when you start to respect and understand each other's structures doesn't mean there aren't days you drive each other a little crazy, right? But sometimes you start to reverse. So the day came, this was kind of spooky for me. Remember this? So I'm sitting on the couch and he comes in, he's talking and he goes, do you think you could help me on Thursday? I'm trying to visualize my appointment. He goes, well, can you help me or not? I'm like, wait a minute, I'm thinking. I'm like, oh no, he just did me and I just did him. But I have to say, sitting there and experiencing what that felt like, and now with our little 4-year-old grandson, I'm finding out what it's like to have that mirror back of someone going, he calls me Mins, but need to do this. Everything is just so fast. I'm like, wait a minute, let's just slow down. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to end up with epicanthic folds. Thanks. So this is, first of all, it can make or break a relationship, this one trait, because we're on a different time frame. Exposed eyelids, I wanted it 5 minutes ago. Epicanthic fold, I really need to do some research. I need to look at it. I need to study it. And if you really want an honest, considered answer and you're someone with exposed eyelids, you will wait for the person with the epicanthic folds to do their processing so that you get a really good answer. Now, if we go on vacation, Ross is full of information. I'm like, how did you know that? He goes, I read the brochure. Oh, there's a brochure? And we're supposed to read it? I'm like, let's just pack a bag and go. But if we were both alike, we'd just always be running around, never really thinking through what we're doing. Or we would both be sitting around thinking and never taking any action. Because with every single trait, when we're in our healthy place, you're like, I can get a lot done in a short period of time. Ross is a really good thinker and a processor. He doesn't miss anything. I do sometimes. 1, 2, 6, let's just get it done. What can happen, though, for someone with epicanthic folds, when we get into more of an unhealthy place, is using thinking as an excuse to never take action. For me, it would be taking action as an excuse not to stop and think. So there's just wonderful things that we can learn from each other and even from our own structures. But this particular one, the eyelids, has so much to do with how two people get along and process information. Does that make sense? Those of you with the epicanthic folds, would you agree with me? The worst thing I can do is say, quick, give me an answer. Like even if one of your friends calls and says, hey, let's go to the movies. We have 2 choices. Which one do you want to go to? And you go, oh, I don't know. I haven't read the reviews. Yeah, I don't even know who's in the movie, you know. And what you'll probably do is say, you pick it, and we'll just go to that movie because you haven't had a chance to even think about it. Now, there may be some careers like you wouldn't want me editing. I'd be like, 1, 2, 6 looks good to me. Well, that used to happen back when I used to actually write a newsletter and put a stamp on it. Remember those days? I would write it off the top of my head, print it out, and I figured that was the first and last draft, give it to Ross and say, would you just look it over? And he'd say, can I write on this? Because he'd be going, how did you get from this thought to this thought? And what about this? And I'm like, oh. Because in my mind, 1, 2, 6, it's done. And he was actually looking at it and reading it and going, you left a lot of stuff out. You need to go back and redo it. But then the day came, because I learned a lot, where I gave him a draft and he gave it back. And I said, did you read this? I don't see any marks. He goes, no, it's fine. Because he was teaching me a better way of doing things that was far more effective. So does that make sense? Yeah, I just love this stuff. Now, when it comes to confidence, there's 2 extremes of traits. And this also has a lot to do with career path. And it used to be with a lot of facial structures, they would actually look at it and compare it to animals. And this is one trait you can do that. On one extreme, we have a long, narrow face. And Ross has more of a long, narrow face. The opposite trait is more of a broad shield face. So we've got the long, narrow face, which is more like the deer. Think about a deer. From a confidence perspective, a deer doesn't just run out of the woods and say, hey, I'm here. You know, they're a lot more cautious. They're going to step back. I mean, we live out in the woods, so we have deer everywhere. It's taken years, but they've gotten used to us. But still, they don't just come running out to see us. We know we're being watched a lot of times in the woods. But a deer is going to be a lot more cautious, and we'll look at that again in a moment. Someone with more of a broad shield face, a lot of width through here as opposed to length, looks more like the lion. The person with the broad shield face has innate self-confidence. They figure they'll figure it out no matter what. Perfect example. And I love when people just do their traits without even knowing. So I was at how I actually got around to writing this book. All ties in. For years I'd go to intuitives and they'd say, oh, your guides say you're writing a book. I go, well, tell my guides, no. I'm not writing a book. And this went on for years. Because in my mind, a book was a novel. And I am not a novelist, as you will see. So one of my goals, though, was to Spirit of Change every year does an expo. It used to be in Sturbridge, and now it's in Marlborough, Mass. It's a 2-day expo. Like 6,000 people come through. And I really wanted to be there. I wanted to know, how do I get a booth? How do I do a workshop? And so I went to kind of research, and I said, everyone's either got a book or a CD. I got to write a book. So that was really, kind of forced me to just do it. And when you do something, you do it in your own way, it can be so much fun, and it can be easy. So I finally written the book. Actually, I had just gotten my books. we go to Sturbridge, and I'm doing a workshop. And I was going to talk about, I think, eyelids. And I said, I'm going to need a volunteer. And all these hands went up. And I looked at the hands, and they all had a broad shield face. And I tell everyone, if you want to volunteer, just look for those people with width here. And I said, do any of you know what I want you to do? No. Do you care? No. I said, all right, let's talk about this for a minute. So someone with a broad shield face has innate self-confidence. Of course I can do it. I'll volunteer. What do you want me to do? I'll figure it out as I go. Now, someone with a long, narrow face, this is really important for anyone with a long, narrow face, or anyone here a teacher? Okay. Definitely something to know if you're involved with teaching. Because someone with a long, narrow face, their confidence is learned, and they learn it in a very step-by-step fashion. Another example, another story, our friends. She had a long, narrow face. Her husband had a broad shield face. And they were taking scuba diving lessons, and they missed the first lesson. So now they're in the second lesson, and they're supposed to put their tank on and get in the pool. And Marilyn said, I don't know what to do. And her husband with the broad shield face goes, just put your tank on and jump in. I said, Marilyn, you have a long, narrow face. You are step by step. You missed the first step. Even after they were done and certified, she went back and took the first class again because she never got that first step, and that kind of cemented everything for her. So someone with a long, narrow face really needs and wants to learn in a very step-by-step fashion. So really important for anyone to know if they're learning something new, to make sure that if they feel like their teacher just skipped a step, that you pull them back and ask them to go over the step that you feel that you just missed. It's really important because someone with a long, narrow face, when they've had the opportunity to learn in a step-by-step fashion and learn and build that confidence, they'll have all the confidence in the world, and they will appear to be innately confident, but they will have done the work to do the steps. Someone with a broad shield face, you know, the lion. I used to ice dance, and I had 3 pros because I was still freestyle skating, and I would drive an hour and a half to have a lesson with Paul, half-hour lesson with Paul. He was such a good instructor, and he worked me so hard. So I'm skating and waiting for my lesson, and I'm doing the Viennese waltz, which, well, I thought I was, which is a gold level dance, and it's one of the compulsories off in the Olympics. And he goes, Ginger, what are you doing? I said, I'm doing the Viennese waltz. He goes, no, you're not. Come with me. And he pulled me back to the step that I was actually really on. I thought I was 1, 2, 6. I am up here. He goes, no, you are right here. And he brought me back to that step. Because innate self-confidence, of course I can do the Viennese waltz. There's a reason why it's a gold level dance in the Olympics, because for the most part, women ice dancing are always skating backwards. I mean, your back outside edges are just incredible. Front edges, different, unless you're a gold level, Olympic skater. So when my partner and I would do the Viennese waltz, because we really did think we were doing it, we'd have a beautiful waltz on one side of the ring, and the other one was like just a quarter, because I wasn't strong skating forward and he wasn't strong skating backwards. So in the Olympics, they actually go out and measure to make sure it's equal. So we weren't even close, but I thought I was. Broad shield face, lion, bring it on.
So how do you know the broad, I mean, some people you can definitely tell.
Some people you can tell.
You're saying you have that?
I have more of a broad shield face. I have more width through here than I have length. Whereas Ross is like long, narrow. Where's my book?
Yeah, I can see that, but he's tall, so.
No, it's got nothing to do with it. Yeah.
I want to make sure I have the right thing.
Yeah, let me get my, who's got the longest, narrowest face is Kerry. So look at John Kerry. Thank you. That's
All right, well, that's obvious.
yes. Versus, see the width
Yeah.
here. Yeah. Now, see, that's a really good question, because that's where the B trait comes in, where someone, and the next trait too, They're not really a long, narrow face. They're not really completely broad-shouldered. They're in the middle. So let's talk about that for a minute, because there are a lot of people with the B trait. They've got a little bit of both. Now, what's wonderful about that, if you have a B trait, is you really do understand both extremes. What happens when you're under stress and you have a B trait, it's hard to do either one, and you can feel very immobilized. And so being able, and that's why you can find a lot of teachers with B traits, because they're always working with these extremes and B traits. They're working with everybody, and they're very comfortable at it. And a lot of, there's eyebrow structures that come into play too with a B trait. Like I said, I could keep you here for a long time. Just to kind of give you an overview. So let's look at wide set versus close set eyes. If the parameter, if you could take one of your eyes and actually fit it, I have close set eyes. I could not fit even, I couldn't fit a whole eye in between, you know, the inner canthus here. I have very close set eyes. There are many people with wide set eyes who could take and fit one of their eyes, like 1.5 of their eyes in between. A lot of children, a lot of young children have got the widest set eyes. It's like their eyes are like out to here. So two different perspectives. When we have very close set eyes, you know, visually what we see is more of what's right in front of us. We've got to see more of the details. Close set eyes would be someone who'd be, you know, want to like rearrange the chairs maybe because they're not quite lined up. The details, very detail oriented, because you're focused on a narrow perspective. Someone who has more space, physical space, can actually take in more. They can see the big picture. There's someone who really is looking more into the future, the big picture, where we headed. In fact, anyone who's in business or thinking about starting a business, you want one of each, because you want someone with close set eyes who really can focus on the details, what needs to get done today, this week, this month. And then you want the person with the wider set eyes who really can be more of a visionary, can see the bigger picture of, you know, where we're going to be a month, a year, 5 years down the road. That's hard for me to do. People say, do you have any workshops coming up next fall? Fall? It's February. You know, for me to think that far ahead is really hard for me because I'm a one-woman show. So I love the details of making sure there's a plan and taking care of everything. But together, the thing that's great about traits and even extremes, when extremes come together, whether it's, you know, friends, significant others, coworkers, spouses, when you both understand each other's traits, you really are the complete package. Or, you know, in a business setting, you've got all the concepts that you need. You don't want everyone in a business to have close set eyes and never have a future plan. You don't want everyone to have wide set eyes and have their heads in the clouds dreaming about where you're going to go, but no idea of how you're going to get there. So there is a reason why we tend to be attracted to our opposite, because we each offer something really valuable. Does that make sense? Let me see if I have. I can remember going out to California years ago for a gala, and these were kinesiologists from all around the world. It was really cool. And there was this one, I don't have this picture. There was this one, there was a whole group of people from Denmark. They were gorgeous, gorgeous people. And there was this young boy, maybe like 12 or 13, who would come with his parents. He had the widest set eyes I'd ever seen. I mean, there was this much space between his eyes. I mean, and these were the most attractive people you've ever seen. But the wide set eyes on him were absolutely incredible. And I'd love to know, you know, where he's probably now in his 30s or 40s, you know, what his future, you know, looks like, because it was just the most amazing thing to see. And as a culture, actually, they all tended to have a lot more wide set eyes. And culture is another whole workshop, which is really kind of cool when you start to look at different cultures and what traits are more predominant. What traits, there's some traits I had a hard time finding pictures for the book, because they're not traits that we consider attractive. whereas in another culture they might be. So, we're all so different. Let's look at lips. Upper and lower lip have two different functions. The upper lip, again, we're either looking at no cells or fewer cells. I have a thinner upper lip. If we grew up being told to zip it, we learn to keep our mouths shut. Or just stick to the facts, no emotion, stick to the facts. So lips are created. If you look at little babies, they often have beautiful, full lips, unless as they grow older, they're told to zip it or, to be seen and not heard. Because the upper lip is how we actually form our words and how we actually are able to verbally express ourselves. However, you will find a lot of artists who maybe aren't verbally expressive, but they paint or they draw or they write music. They are involved with some type of self-expression. One of my clients years ago was an artist. I went to one of her shows. It was kind of cool to watch the evolution of her paintings and the colors. And she said, and she had a very full upper lip. And she goes, "But Ginger, I'm kind of quiet." She goes, I said, "But you're an artist. Your expression is on the canvas." But someone with a fuller upper lip is someone who's very comfortable with self-expression, with expressing emotions, talking about them, listening to them, hearing about them. So you may find a lot of people who have gone in to, say, become a therapist, a psychologist, may be very comfortable. They have full lips, may be very comfortable listening to any type of emotion that someone may be having. So, but self-expression in any form. The lower lip, the full lower lip. Do we have anyone? Looking for lips. You probably have the fullest. Okay, full lower lip is another whole story altogether. Someone with a full lower lip is someone who is automatically, spontaneously generous with their time, energy, and money. Would you say that's accurate? Yes.
Very full lip. I said I should have a very full lip.
Well, your lower lip is definitely fuller than your upper lip. You are going to be more to the facts when it comes to conversation. If someone asks you how you feel, you'll tell them how you think. Yeah. I think that shouldn't have happened. Not, I was really mad. I think that shouldn't have happened. Think, not feel, which is fine. That's who you are. But the fuller lower lip has so much to do with generosity. And you don't want to change that if you're someone with a fuller lower lip. It's who you are. What you want to do is balance it so you're not giving it all away. I tell anyone with a fuller lower lip, put a little sticky on the mirror in the bathroom that says, "Do I have it to give today, my time, energy, or money?" As just a reminder so that you are replenishing all that you are putting out. Otherwise, you get really tired or resentful or a little bit of both. Because it is so spontaneous. It's who you are. Now, when you're dealing with someone with a thinner lower lip, this person is still generous with a great deal of thought. It's interesting. I'd done a workshop with some other friends, and we did a raffle, and someone got a free face reading session with me. And she had a very thin lower lip, and I was talking about how to her, and I said, you put a lot of thought into cards or gifts or any acknowledgement that you give someone. And she's getting ready to leave, and she goes, "Well, I have something for you." And it was a stone with a saying on it, and I know she probably put a lot of thought into it because she wanted to make sure she brought something that would have meaning for me. So that meant a lot because we're just going over her traits, and that is something. So if you are someone with a full lower lip and you get a gift or a card or an acknowledgement from someone with a thinner lower lip, know that they really have been thinking about you. It's not as spontaneous, but there has been a great deal of thought that's gone into that acknowledgement or that gift or that card. Does that make sense? Yeah.
We accept any lower lip or thinner lip or donations to the Berwick Public Library too.
Absolutely. A gift is a gift. Yes.
Put that on the sticky.
Yes, absolutely. Any questions so far? Quiet group. Let's go over one other thing, and so that we'll have plenty of time for individual questions if you want. It's a trait that's not on here, but it's one that's good to know. It has to do with torso length. Because it has to do with our comfort zone. Because I know there's a couple of people here who are already going, is she ever going to stop talking so I can just get up? And usually I start with this, and I probably should have, because there are extremes of torso length. Ross, you want to come back up? Because he probably needs to stretch by now. This has to do with our physical comfort. Ross has a long torso compared to legs, so longer torso, shorter legs. He is designed to move. Do you have a long torso? Are you getting uncomfortable sitting?
Want me to stand?
Oh, sure, why not? Oh, yeah. So someone with a longer torso compared to legs, you need to move. So like after a certain period of time, you're going to be like, I need to at least move or wiggle or stretch or something, because you're physically getting uncomfortable sitting. Thanks. Now, I'm not 5 feet tall, but I have really long legs. I can stand next to someone who's 5'6", 5'7", and our hip bones will be in the same place, because I don't even have a torso. I mean, there is just no torso. I'm actually designed to sit. So Ross and I would go out to dinner, and like after half an hour, I'm settling in, and I'm really getting comfortable, and he would be like, and I'm thinking, we'll get a little cup of coffee, we'll have a little, and he would just be wiggling and moving because he was physically uncomfortable. So now he'll go, my torso's talking, he will go for a little walk, I'll order the coffee, he'll stretch a little, come back, and we get another maybe 10 or 15 minutes, because like I said, I've settled in. I'm actually designed to sit. Those of us with the shorter torso, long legs, the best exercise for us is a bike ride. You can sit and exercise at the same time, especially if you had been on your feet all day. Like when I used to work in the hospital, I would be on my feet all day long. I never sat down. I would force myself to go home and run 5 miles, because I knew when I sat down, I didn't know this, but I knew intuitively that once I sat down, I was not getting up the rest of the night. That was it, because I had gone so far beyond my comfort zone. And that's really important to know, especially if you have a job that requires you to sit a lot, but you have a long torso, is to, stand and do a phone call. Even just standing and wiggling. I'm so glad that they've invented, this is my invention, I should have followed through, I had you build it, of having desks for the kids in school to go up and down, because kids with longer torsos, short legs, like our little grandson, they are designed to move. And if they can stand and do their work, and even if they're wiggling, they are focused and paying attention because they're more physically comfortable, or even lying down on their stomach. Whereas I loved going to school and having my little desk and my chair, and just because that's my structure. I'm comfortable sitting. Even though I'm very physical, I'm comfortable just settling in to the chair. Like I will be ready to sit down after a while, after standing. So that's really important if you're running a meeting or something. You don't have to point out people's structures of their torso, but to be able to say, feel free to get up and move around if you're getting uncomfortable. So, because even if someone is up, maybe just standing, and just kind of leaning and listening, they are paying attention because they're more comfortable. They're on their feet, they're standing, they're honoring their torso length. I can remember watching, I'm just going to keep aging myself, but Joan Benoit, when she won, do you remember Joan Benoit? I mean, she couldn't be any taller than me, but she had a long torso, short legs, and even as short as she was, she won gold for marathons. I don't know what her times were, I don't remember that, but she was an amazing runner, but she was built to run, and built to run long distance. That wouldn't be me, I'd be like, I'd just be bored. I'd be like, let's do something else. But that's important to know if you are running a meeting or teaching, or for your own comfort level, to know when you need to stand and when you need to sit. And then there's a lot of people who are right in the middle. They're not an A, they're not a C, and they already know there's times that they need to just sit down and relax, and other times they need to get up and get moving to do something, because they need a little bit of both. Questions? Any questions so far? Anything at all? Okay, let's do one more thing before you go. One of the things I got to study in California was educational kinesiology. Has anyone heard of Brain Gym or Paul Dennison? Okay. Educational kinesiology was a PhD educator, Paul Dennison, working with a neurologist to study the brain and how we learn. And it's fascinating. And with educational kinesiology, you're really looking at what happens to our ability to learn or remember when we're stressed. And for some people, sitting for an hour is stressful. So the one thing I'll say, we'll do a little cross patterning and get our brain hemispheres integrated, because I work with the brain all the time because I'm working with people in trauma. From an Eastern perspective of our body and energy, energy travels up through the ground, through our legs, travels up to the midline of our body, zigzags, and goes to our opposite brain hemisphere. That's when everything is going well. That means we're electrical, brain hemispheres are integrated, we're able to process information, remember, make decisions, energy is flowing properly. When we get really stressed, our perception of stress, doesn't matter what someone else is stressed with, that energy travels up from the earth, travels up through our legs, is not able to cross through the midline and travel straight up in an ipsilateral flow, like two parallel lines. It's like someone has literally split us right down the middle. Think about the expression, oh, he can't even see beyond the nose on his face. We've all been there where you can just stare at someone and you just don't see anything because energetically you've gotten split right down the middle. What happens then is the brain hemispheres are up fighting for dominance. They're not working together as a team. Look at all the drug ads on TV for all the midline dis-ease going on in the body, from the reproductive system to the digestive tract to the heart to the lungs to headaches, head, neck, spine. It's all midline. And so when we get stressed, what we want to be able to do is to energetically get that energy flowing again through our body. So one of the simplest ways to do it is cross-patterning. Cross-patterning to a kinesiologist is like aspirin to a doctor. Cross-patterning and call me in the morning. Because it's a brain hemisphere integration technique. It's so simple to do. We'll do it in a minute. With kids, a lot of the kids I work with severe learning disabilities cannot cross the midline. Therefore, they are not able to even do their lowercase letters or numbers. They have a hard time integrating information that's coming in. They literally can't see what's right in front of them. When I muscle test their ability to track, it might be strong here, and by the time their eyes are in the middle, their brain is already shut down. So here are these poor kids who want to learn. They're going to school, they're excited about going to school, and they're having a really hard time. It's usually not about school, it's usually about whatever the stress is that's going on in their life that then gets measured at school. So a lot of kids cannot even do Mary Max. You know how we do Mary Max? A lot of kids cannot, they literally cannot cross the midline. So what I would have them do is just hold their hands out and say, let me come to you. And I would just come to them until they're able to start to meet me and start to meet me along the midline. And it's amazing to see as they start to be able to cross pattern or do their Mary Max, their brain hemispheres start to work together a lot easier, and they're able to learn. So let's everybody stand up for a minute. We'll cross pattern. We'll end with cross patterning because y'all have to drive home. So, all right. Make sure all your brain hemispheres are working together. So what I'm going to have you do, we're going to start by just bringing opposite hand to opposite knee. Yeah, give yourself plenty of space. So when we do this, the brain hemispheres have to work together. But then we're going to switch it. Same hand, same leg. Now we're actually splitting the brain hemispheres. They're working separately right now. Now go back to crossing. Yeah, I got to think for a minute because you just switched your brain off. We're literally scratching the brain right now. I'll give you one other fact in a minute. That's fascinating. Same side. It's called cross patterning. And we always want to end crossing so our brain hemispheres are working together as a team. So anytime you go out walking, get your arms swinging across the midline. You will get your brain on. Now here's the other thing, the last final point. Our eyes are the only part of our brain that is outside of our body. And we feel with our eyes. So if we're going through a real emotional time, our eyes are tired and so is our brain because they're one and the same. So if we do brain work, we're helping our eyes. If you can cross pattern and start bringing your eyes around the clock in all the different directions, there's so many things we can do. With kids, You get them doing the alphabet, you get them doing multiplication tables with their eyes. It gets very advanced, but boy, when they can do that, their brains are on. And learning becomes so much easier and fun for them because they can actually pay attention and process all the information that's coming in. Yeah.
Saying to do the eyes around in a circle while you're doing the cross.
Yeah, you work up to that. Yes. Yes.
Is that kind of like doing the pat your head?
It can feel like that. Something that's even quicker that you can do, if you're not quite ready to put eyes together with cross patterning. You know how our mothers always told us that they had eyes in the back of their head? Mm-hmm. Well, we all do. We actually see right here, right above the mastoid process, it indents right here. It's called the primary visual area. If you were to shine a light through the pupil and have it come out the back of the head, it would be right here. And so by massaging that point and then bringing your eyes around the clock, clockwise and counterclockwise, you can actually get your eyes and brain switched on. Every eye position tells a different story. Sometimes these points are actually a little tender in the back of your head. Yeah. And if they're tender, that's your body saying, oh, I really need to do this. You will feel better, you'll feel sharper, you'll think clearer, you'll see things clearer. Just do a little bit every day, not to the point of pain. You want to be able to get rid of pain. But if they're tender, you need to be doing a little massaging, and, or even in a more of like an infinity symbol or figure eight symbol, and get your brain hemispheres integrate and get your eyes on. So, yeah. Well, I want to thank everybody. I'll stay here with any questions if anyone wants a book. Anytime I teach a workshop, it's $20 as opposed to $25. So up to you. I've got one to look through if you want to look at it. And if you have any questions, come on up and be happy to answer them individually. Thank you. Sure.